Alrighty, hello, my name is Mari and welcome to my channel. So I recently left the United States pretty much immediately after I finished my university degree in Minnesota. When I was still in high school, I knew that I wanted to leave and do some sort of backpacking type of adventure. I wanted to do it before I even finished college, but the way that things worked out, I ended up finishing my college in the States first, and now I finally have the time to be able to leave and be free and do some traveling and backpacking. So I recently started vlogging these backpacking experiences, and I will continue to do so. But I wanted to make a video to talk a little bit about how I decided to do this sort of adventure. Then I also wanted to talk about all the different steps that I had to take leading up to this adventure after I knew it was definitely happening about a year and a half ago. I'll talk a little bit about how I told my family and my parents, how I saved money, and how I decided to budget in general, how I figured out what I need to pack, and how I figured out all of the different little things that I need as far as passport, travel visa, doctors, prescriptions, and having travel health insurance, having a STEP account, having the right credit cards and debit cards that I'll need to be traveling and not have any problems accessing my bank accounts. And then also just how I decided where I was going to go and what sorts of things that I found important to look into before leaving for these locations that I will be going to. So basically I decided to travel and decided to leave the United States as soon as I finished university because, as I already mentioned, it's something that I wanted to do for years and years. I was drawn specifically to Latin America because I really want to learn Spanish. That's also something that as soon as I learned that some people are bilingual, as many of you know, it's not super common in the United States to be bilingual unless you're raised in a bilingual household. I feel like it's just a superpower, and I couldn't understand why I never learned another language, and Spanish always just seemed to me a very useful and beautiful language to learn. So I actually found a program in my school. I was going to university at the University of Minnesota that required that I take at least 3 or 4 semesters of a language for my degree. And I knew I didn't want to take those classes at the school. So before I even decided to pursue doing this, I had a conversation with the study abroad office and made a plan to be able to study abroad to obtain all of the credits that I would need for my language credits. That is what determined where I would start my travels, because I basically just saved those language credits for the last thing that I have to do before I graduate. And then I actually took a semester off and just worked, saved money for 6 months. From January to June, I was just working full time and living in the cheapest place that I could find to be able to save as much money as possible. I also was working while I was attending university in the years prior, but having that extra 6 months where I wasn't having to take classes and I could really just work like 40 to 60 hours a week really helped my bank account to prepare for this time. So June came and it was time for me to depart on my study abroad experience here in Mexico, and I bought a one-way ticket because I knew I'm just going to be traveling afterwards. So I'm not gonna come here, study, and then go back to the United States. I'm just gonna finish my studies here. My diploma will get sent to my parents' house in the United States, and then I'm just gonna continue traveling Latin America for indefinitely, basically as long as I can. And if I end up finding a situation where I'm able to stay in Latin America for a more long extended period of time, a situation as in like a job basically and a place where I can live, then I will be more than happy to work and live in Latin America wherever I can, because I simply want to. It's my dream and I'm trying to fulfill it. So let's see. Right now I'm attending this school in Cuernavaca, which is called Samanahawk Language Institute, I believe, or Samanahawk Language School. It's a school that teaches Spanish to people who speak English, or honestly probably to anybody, because while you're at school you really only need to speak Spanish. So even if you arrive not speaking any Spanish, they're going to begin talking to you only in Spanish right away. So I believe my tuition for this school is only $330 per week only. I think that's pretty affordable as far as like language courses for a whole week less than $100 a day to have 4 hours of intensive, like one-on-one Spanish tutoring at a school. This school is amazing, and I would recommend it to anybody because the people who run it have been running it for 50 years now, so they're super knowledgeable about things all around Mexico. Honestly, if you're trying to come and study here and then do any other traveling around Mexico, they're able to give you really good advice, and they know a lot of people. As far as like finding good connections through them is definitely an option, and they also have the ability to set you up with a homestay. So on top of my $330 per week at this Spanish school, for either $40 or $50 a week depending on where you stay and if you have a roommate or not. So I'm staying here about 10 minutes walking distance from my school and about 20 minutes walking distance from the center of Cuernavaca, so it's a really great location. After I finish studying here in Cuernavaca at Semana Hawk, which I'm doing for 9 weeks, I will go back to Mexico City and got a round trip ticket to Puerto Escondido, which is also in Mexico in the state of Oaxaca. I'm going to spend a week in Puerto Escondido, and then I'm going to go to Colombia and then Buenos Aires. So I decided on going to these places because Colombia has always stood out to me as a place that I want to go, just because they have so many things. The Caribbean Ocean for one. They have mountains, rainforests, big cities, multiple big cities, not just like one major one, and I think I could very easily spend months on end in Colombia based on what I've seen from other travel vloggers. But I ended up picking Argentina, Buenos Aires, Argentina, to go to after Colombia because I ended up meeting some people, and then specifically one person who are calling my soul to go to Argentina after this. So I'll be solo traveling for the next few months or so while I'm living here in Cuernavaca in Mexico, and then also while I'm in Colombia. But then when I get to Argentina, I'll have kind of like a home base to be able to spend time with people who I'm really excited to spend time with. The first thing that I did when I was preparing to come on this program was tell my parents about a year in advance before I left for this expedition. So my parents easily accepted the fact that, okay, I'm gonna study abroad to do my Spanish credits. Makes sense, I wanna be immersed, yada yada. But I was open with them and I told them I want to solo travel, and I've been watching YouTube videos on girls specifically who go and backpack around the world and how there's ways to do it safely, and I wanted to tell them so far in advance, basically right when I decided it was something I was going to do in the foreseeable future, because I wanted to give them time to mentally prepare, since I know as parents it's not going to be easy for them to let me go solo travel in the world all by myself. Luckily my parents are very supportive, and there's no way that they would like exile me from the family for doing something like this, but it definitely did take them months and months to come to terms with this. I think I already touched on saving money a little bit, but how I learned about budgeting for this type of trip was mostly through watching travel vloggers or reading travel blogs online for the countries that I want to go to, because each country is a little bit different in terms of how you're going to have to budget. And most budgets don't include the airfare in between each country either. You can take buses between countries, but I think it's mostly easier to bus within countries and then take a flight from country to country. For like the average backpacker, you could probably do it for cheaper, but it could also be a lot more expensive if you're the type of person that wants to stay in nicer places or eat like in restaurants every single meal and not necessarily want to eat street food or cook for yourself ever. So anyways, that's kind of a rough estimate that I went off of, and yeah, I just worked as much as I possibly could in those 6 months that I wasn't doing school before I left, because I knew those were my last moments that I would have to save money. So like I said, I was working at least 40 and up to 60 hours a week, like full-time on, work full-time on, because you're gonna have full-time off when you're traveling. Something else that I would do while I was planning for my travels, something that I did while watching YouTube videos and reading travel blogs, is that I would always have my Google Maps app open on my phone, because you're able to look up locations and pin them, and well, not pin them, but save them for future reference. So basically anytime I was reading a travel blog or watching a travel vlog about Colombia or Ecuador or Mexico or Argentina or anywhere that I potentially want to visit one day, if there was a recommendation for a hostel or a recommendation for somewhere I need to eat or an activity I want to do or just a city in general that I think looks cool and I want to visit, I would just click on the location on Google Maps and save it. It literally takes like 5 seconds. You can make a little note if you want. That might take 10 seconds, but it's just such an important tool, I think. It seems not so important when you're in the United States and all these pins are so far away all over the world, but now that I'm actually here and I have things pinned around Mexico that I'm actually referencing and using, it's so helpful. And I'm really happy that I've been doing it for like Colombia and Argentina too, because when I go there, I'll be able to do the same thing. Just pull out my maps and boom, I can reference everything that I've read or watched about. In relation to Google Maps as well, you are able to download entire cities offline so that when you arrive in a city, let's say you don't have Wi-Fi connection or you haven't been able to get a local SIM card yet to have data, if you download the map for a city on Google Maps before you arrive there, you'll be able to view the entire city on maps even when you don't have any signal or data or Wi-Fi, which is super important for just not getting lost. I think safety in general, and if let's say you have to take a taxi to your hostel or wherever you're going, you can watch where they're driving you on maps to make sure that you're not going like super far off of the path where you're supposed to be headed. You can also download entire languages on Google Translate. So I have English and Spanish downloaded so that if I ever am in the same situation where I don't have Wi-Fi or connection, I'm able to still use my translator when it's necessary to have to translate something. And I also started working with a Spanish tutor for 1 hour a week on Italki. It was a really great experience because I think it was only $10 or $11 per hour that I spent with my tutor. So once a week or once every other week, I would just make an appointment and meet with my Spanish tutor, and it helped me to practice Spanish a little bit before I actually left to arrive here, which now that I'm actually here, I'm super grateful that I did that. Even just being able to say basic things and have a more accurate accent, I think really makes a world of a difference. So those were all things that I was doing for the past year leading up to my travels. But then came the month to 2 month period right before I was gonna be leaving, when I really had to say, oh shit, I'm gonna be leaving soon. I need to figure out what I'm gonna pack. I need to make sure I have a doctor's appointment. I need to make sure I have the right credit cards, a STEP account, all the little bits and pieces that I just knew I needed to get done before I left. Some of these things I did start thinking about before 1 to 2 months because like I had to make a doctor's appointment, and sometimes it can take a while to get into the doctors in the United States with an appointment. So I think I set my doctor's appointment probably like 4 months in advance of me leaving, and then I had my appointment like 1 month before I left. Basically, I made a doctor's appointment with my regular doctor online, just a video visit to check in with her, let her know that I was going to be leaving. And with my primary doctor, I had to request that she puts in a request to be able to pick up the prescriptions that I regularly take. Usually, I only pick up a prescription for like the month or for 3 months at a time in the case of birth control. And I needed some of my prescriptions for longer than that. So most things you are able to find at any pharmacia around Latin America, but things like my specific type of birth control, I wanted to make sure that I had on hand for as long of a time period as possible so I wouldn't have to worry about trying to find like my specific type of birth control. So I had her put in a request to my insurance company asking that they allow me to pick up my prescription for 6 months instead of just 3 months, and they allowed it. So then I had to call and refill my prescription, and I think how it worked is I went and picked up the 3 months, and then they just allowed me to refill it right away again, like that same day, and I went and picked up the second 3 months like 2 days later. I did that just like a couple weeks before I left, but definitely look into doing that and talk to your doctor about doing that. If you have prescriptions you're gonna need to pick up for a long period of time, start making that plan at least a month before you go, because it can be a little stressful having to deal with like the insurance company and your doctor and the pharmacy. Then I had an appointment with a specific travel doctor. A travel doctor is someone who basically tells you if you're gonna be in any zones where you need like more vaccinations for if you're somebody who gets vaccinated. So I am planning on going to the rainforest and areas that potentially have malaria, so I got some malaria medication to take with me on my travels. She also gave me a couple vaccinations that I just needed boosted. I don't think anything specific for my travels, but just like re-upped me basically on things that I needed re-ups on. And she gave me pills for traveler's diarrhea, which I'm pretty sure you can just get at the pharmacy as here, but it's nice to have them on hand because, you know, if that starts happening, then having them on hand is nice to not have to like run to the pharmacy when you're not feeling well. The same reason I also packed Dayquil and NyQuil and some allergy medications. Those are all things I could find here, but I just want like a small supply of the medications that are most common for me to have to use just on hand so that if I need them, I just have them and I don't have to worry about running out and finding them. If you want to hear more about what I packed for my travels, I'll put a link up here to the video, what I packed. Yes, so that's on doctor's visits. Definitely make an appointment with your primary doctor and a travel doctor at least a month or two before you leave. About 6 months before I left, I double checked that my passport was still good. Luckily, my passport is good until 2028, I believe, so I don't have to worry about that, but make sure you have a passport and make sure it's not gonna expire in the time period that you're planning on traveling for. Same thing goes for your driver's license, I guess. My driver's license is good until I'm 25 and I'm 23, so I have about 2 years left on that, which also I feel pretty good about that I'll be able to go back to the United States and renew my driver's license sometime in the next 2 years. As far as credit cards and debit cards goes, I heard that in some countries it's easier to use Visa, and some countries it's easier to use MasterCard. Some countries it doesn't matter at all. For example, in Mexico right now I've had no problem using either or, but I think it's good to have one of each, a Visa card and a MasterCard, and then also a debit card when you're traveling. That's all I have. I think I have a MasterCard, a Visa card, both credit, and then one debit card. I did bring a bit of United States cash with me just to have in case of emergency, but for the most part you don't have to pack cash with you to bring because you're going to be able to get local currency out of an ATM as soon as you arrive. But specifically for Argentina, I also brought a little bit extra cash just for when I go to Argentina, because when I was researching about traveling there, some articles and YouTubers informed me that it's a lot more effective to have United States dollars in Argentina right now than it is to take money out of an ATM. So I am bringing United States dollars specifically for Argentina as well. But most other countries, you'll be good with just taking money out of the ATM. Okay, as far as travel health insurance goes, you don't need it. It's not required, but it's just like a safety measure. So if nothing happens, then you spent a couple $100 on travel health insurance for nothing. But if something happens, it could be really, really nice to have health coverage. So for example, I'm going to be using World Nomad because it was recommended to me by a friend who went to Australia for a couple months, and she said for the 8 weeks that she was in Australia, it only costed her around $150 for this travel health insurance, and that would cover up to like $50,000 worth of health insurance coverage if she, let's say, like broke a leg or needed surgery for some reason. So anyways, here in Mexico, I don't have any travel health insurance because I am still affiliated with my University of Minnesota right now, luckily. So they are assisting me with health insurance through this program that I'm doing at Samanahawk Language School. But as soon as my program finishes here and I'm off to Colombia and Argentina, I will be paying for travel health insurance through World Nomad, which I'm hoping is not more than $100 a month. Another thing that I did is make sure that I have my vaccination card for COVID, because I don't think many countries still require a vaccination card, but just in case, I made sure I had my vaccination card and a copy of it. I made sure I had my passport and a copy of it, my license and a copy of it, and a sheet or document on Google Docs full of all my usernames and passwords for any like important accounts that I have, or accounts in general that I don't want to lose the passwords to, and I shared that document with a trusted person so that if something happens to me and they need to access like any of these accounts for any reason of mine, then I'm not the only one that has access to all my accounts. And the copies of insurance, passport, license, vaccination cards is just so that if you, God forbid, lose your passport or license or vaccination record or anything like that, then you have photocopies at least. Also, there's a website that you can check for what you need as far as travel visas and just like regulations for you to be able to be there as a tourist. So that's another thing that I made sure to check. Most countries in South America allow you to be in their country traveling as a tourist for 90 days before you have to leave the country. So that's what I'm planning on doing. I'm gonna be in Colombia for less than 90 days. I'm here in Mexico for less than 90 days, and I'm gonna be in Argentina probably for more than 90 days. So at the 90-day mark in Argentina or before, I'm gonna have to leave, either take a ferry across to Uruguay or take a flight to somewhere else. I'll just have to leave the country, literally go anywhere for like one day, and then I can come back and my 90 days gets renewed. Each country is different with that type of stuff though, so definitely make sure to look into that if you're planning on staying anywhere for longer than 90 days. Okay, I think the last thing that I have to say is that I made an account on Step when I went to Spain in 2019, and I realized it's a really important thing to have. The STEP travel program basically registers you with the country's embassy, which is like a really big deal. The embassies of countries are basically how, if you lose your passport and you're in another country, you need to go to your country's embassy in this other country. So if I lost my passport, I would have to go to the United States Embassy in Mexico, which is probably in Mexico City, talk to them and work with them on how I can either get a new passport or get back to the United States without my passport so that I can get a new passport there. When you register for the STEP travel program, it's very simple. You just have an account and you just plug in every country that you're planning on going to and approximately when you're planning on going there. Then the embassy knows that you're gonna be there. So if something does happen, you lose your passport or you go missing or whatever, the embassy already knows, like they already have a profile on you because of your STEP account. They can just pull it up if your parents have to call and say, oh my God, like I don't know what happened to my daughter. They can say, okay, well, we have her account, at least we like know who she is, and it's like a faster start on getting help for something like that, or for something as simple as losing your passport. It also just helps to already be registered with the country that you're going to. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. I will definitely keep making videos as I travel, so subscribe and stay tuned if you're interested, and see you in another video. Bye.